Back there. All right. Real quick before you guys, I know you got questions. I want to thank a few people. I want to start out with Terry and Kim. You know, I know it wasn't the final result we wanted, but they gave us all the resources. I've quoted that before, and I feel bad that we didn't get it done, you know, for them first and foremost. I want to thank Sean McDermott. You know, I thought Sean did a heck of a job this year. I mentioned it the last time I was up here talking about all we've been through this year in DeMar's situation, and as I told the team yesterday, this is my 25th season in the league. I don't remember a team coming close to what, you know, got thrown this team's way, and I thought Sean navigated that very well and did a great job. His coaches, you know, they all did a, you know, really good job. You know, knowing when at certain times when to back off of football, and you know, we just need to talk about life here for a little bit, which is hard for a coach. Hey, I want to get out there and do X's and O's, and you know, they're just as, you know, frustrated as we all are that we didn't get it done, but it wasn't for a lack of work and effort. Players, you know, I think all these players, they did such a great job battling through this. We had a lot of guys. I know the injury bug hit us a little bit this year. It really did. It's not an excuse, because a lot of guys stepped up, and it was a good chance to see some young guys, you know, get their moment that maybe they wouldn't have. But, you know, as I said, a lot of adversity. I thought the players, we had a lot of guys playing banged up, and you saw it at times. They weren't playing, you know, maybe at the end of the year the way they were at the beginning of the year, and that's just part of it. But very appreciative of all those guys. Our support staff, it takes a full unit to support our program, upstairs, downstairs, trainers, videos, equipment, strength staff, analytics, our scouts. It's a whole team that helps us get out there on Sunday at 1 o'clock or whenever our game is. And last but not least, our fans. Thank you. I'm amazed every week we go on the road, and some weeks it feels like a bowl game where it's half and half. And I know there's very few fan bases that do that. You know, we had the game here that we wanted. We talked about when we get in here getting home playoff games, and you know, fortunately we hadn't lost one till, you know, Sunday night, but you know, we didn't get it done there, and I'm sorry about that. But that is still the goal. You know, as I talked to the team yesterday before they left, is, you know, we did a lot of good things, winning 13 games, 3 divisions in a row. It starts with that. We just gotta finish when it's at home. So again, thank you to our fans, and with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Brandon, acknowledging that after the 13 seconds debacle, if you call it, there was still a sense that this team was going to catapult forward from that. You know, there was a team on the rise, and you had a really nice year. But after what happened Sunday, does it feel like you've taken a step back? Like this loss feels way different than where you were going after last year's loss?
Well, I think it's how you look at it, Sal. I mean, that loss, you looked at it as, you know, people put it on a coin toss and some other things. You know, there was a lot of things we could have done in that game well before 13 seconds to win that game. Unfortunately, that's what gets remembered as 2 things: that 13 seconds, which got it to overtime, and then the coin toss, and that we were part of this rule change. If we had done some other things in that game, we would have advanced. And same thing, we played a lot of good football last season. The one thing I would say about last year, Sal, is we went through a stretch, win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. You know, till we went up to New England and won that game, whether we got in the playoffs was a real question. And that game catapulted our team. It was something that got us going, and we got hot. And that's the key. You got to win enough games to put yourself in position to make a run, but you got to be playing your best football when you're going to run into a good team that we did the other day. I would say the end of the season, that we never put together, I don't have the answer for you, we never put together a complete game. If you look back at some of the games we had early in the year, we had stretches in games, but we never, from kickoff to the final buzzer, you know, we were finding a way, and that's where I give a lot of credit to this team. It wasn't always the offense, it wasn't always the defense. Naeem Hines in the Patriot game, like, it just, a lot of things. Unfortunately, we were not playing our best football at the end. I think a year ago, we were, you know, we just ran into a really good Chiefs team, and we didn't get it done that day.
To follow that, Brandon, that's kind of just it.
Put that on the distractions, and not the distractions, but just the disruptions to the schedule, be it the snowstorms, what happened tomorrow, and how difficult is it to evaluate your roster, knowing this team was playing on fumes over the last 3 weeks or so, as opposed to where it was, and knowing how injury thin it was? How difficult is it examining this team over the past 3 weeks as opposed to, you know, when it was healthy?
Well, I think that's what you have to do every year. Is if you lose that last game, there's a bad taste in your mouth, you know, and so you got to step back, and we're going to continue to do that as the week goes on, and, you know, even beyond. Of you don't evaluate if a player didn't play his best game the other day, but he was a big part of why you got there. You know, you don't throw him out. Like, you got to look at holistically how they played through the whole season. And again, I mentioned earlier, some guys were playing, you know, really banged up and not the same looking player as we saw in September, October. But you look at the whole thing and you try to make the best evaluation you can, whether it's a young player. Are they trending up? Is it a young player that they ain't going to make it? Is it an older player that's trending down? Or is it an older player that's going, I think this guy can still help us going forward? So those are all the questions that ultimately we got to work through over the coming weeks.
Brandon, acknowledging all of that, and maybe to Sal's question that started things off, I mean, 13 seconds last year, you know, that's kind of an isolated thing where you look at so much that went right offensively in that game against the Chiefs. I guess what was striking to me anyway about Sunday was it didn't really seem that you guys had an answer from whether it was coaching or execution or for whatever they were trying to do, that there was just no response to it. As the guy who puts this roster together and oversees it, how much does that concern you, and what does it say about what needs to be done moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't win at all, Adam, you're going to look, and you got to look right at yourself first. And so I will definitely look at the makeup. You know, in this case, you were talking about offense, and what did we do well? I mean, statistically, we did a lot of good things this year. But yes, you know, the other day, 10 points is not going to win many playoff games, most likely. You know we got to score more than that, and you know our offensive players, coaches, all of us know that, and so we'll look at it all. Again, we'll start with myself, but there's nothing I can sit here and say. We just, you know, I can't remember a game, and you guys may know it, where, you know, we kick off down 7-0, 3 and out, down 14-0, 3 and out, you know, in a long time since I've been here when our offense was rolling. At least the last 3 years, I can't remember us doing that. And so it just, for whatever reason, you know, we didn't get it done the other day. I think you can look at all sides. You know, you get down 14-0 to a good program, you kind of get out of your game plan a little bit. You're going more hurry up, less under center, less, you know, you're just doing a lot of things to try and play catch up. And again, their offense was doing a nice job on our defense. You know, up front, you know, that game in particular up front, we didn't get it done on either side of the ball. And again, that starts with me.
Brandon, kind of along Adam's question along those lines, you've invested heavily on defense, first and second round picks on the line, at cornerback, you signed Bond. Sean yesterday, though, mentioned, you know, the last game being a reflection of where the team is, and you mentioned there the 10 points. When you look and compare your roster to Cincinnati and Kansas City and sort of this arms race in the AFC, do you have to invest more in the offense around Josh, whether it be better protection up front or better weapons at wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have the perfect line, and I'd love to get as many weapons. We're always looking. I mean, we added Naheem in season, which it was to help our offense as well, another weapon for Josh and company, but also give us a weapon on special teams as well. And I think Naheem will be a guy in particular, having our full offense, you know, an off season to learn, you know, would have been another guy. But yeah, we got to be better in all categories because, again, 10 points didn't get it done. You don't want to throw out everything we did this season. Again, we did a lot of good things statistically, and a lot of them were very similar to the previous year, just looking at a 2-year look at it. There was a lot of things. Unfortunately, we all have a bad taste of the last thing we remember is what happened the other day, which definitely, you know, didn't get the job done. So, you know, I would love to, you know, if it was college, I'd love to get as many 5 stars as we can. It's just, it's the cap, it's the draft. You know, we'll have to work through that and, you know, what can we get? What pieces can we add? You know, we'll lose free agents on both sides of the ball. Like, that's just the reality. We'll see which ones we can get back, but we'll try and do our best. We know, again, we have to win our division. And then you're right, those 2 teams, we were probably talking about the Chiefs other than our division the last couple of years at this end of season, but I think you have to throw Cincinnati in there now that back-to-back year, they're also in the AFC Championship.
Right along the lines of that.
For you to watch your team down 14-0 and lack the explosiveness to get back in the game, what do you think it is? Is it the lack of creativity or like?
Yeah, you know, you never want to see your team down. I mean, you know, I'm an optimist. So we were down, I think, 17-0 in Baltimore, and we found a way to come back in bad weather. And so, you know, I'm an optimist that we're going to get it turned around, but we didn't, and you know, we got to own it. And again, that's all part of what we'll look at going forward.
Brandon, going back to the offense, do you think that you guys got enough out of your wide receivers this year? And do you think that Josh had enough weapons or the right weapons around him in the passing game this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think at different times, guys did a lot of different good things for us. I mean, we started out, you know, pretty good. You know, I know we ran up some points the first few weeks, other than that Miami game, you know, in the heat. But I think through and I don't remember our schedule, but I think our offense was really playing well through the bye. And I don't remember if we were 4-1 or 5-1 whenever that bye fell. For whatever reason, I think the second half of the season, I don't know if some of it was started with, Josh getting his arm hurt. I'm not saying it did. I'm just saying various things happened. That was when some more of the adversity hit, when we played 7 home games and 9.5 road games. One was called early. It's just, that's part of what we got to look at I think we got a lot of good players, but it didn't all play out every week the way it kind of started early in the season, Heather.
Brandon, you got the Bengals who are going back to the AFC Championship game for a second year in a row, Kansas City 5 straight years. How do you touched on a little bit there, but how do you close that gap and quote unquote catch those two teams?
Well, you're not playing like series like you do in baseball. So I don't feel, we played Kansas City very well. We beat them at their place. Hopefully one of these years we'll get them here. But we've played them, in 2021. We beat them there. In 2020 they beat us. 2021 playoffs we lose. That was a back and forth game we've talked about. This year we go in there and beat them. I think it's been a fairly even matchup for the most part. And this is the first time we've played Cincinnati. And so, we'll continue to look at them. But they have a good team. You got to give them a lot of credit. They were in the Super Bowl last year. So, it's not like this was a team that, well, how did they beat you? They went into Tennessee, who was the 1 seed last year, and won. They went into Arrowhead the week after we lost to them and beat them in overtime. And they were winning the Super Bowl until the very last drive. So you could argue they were as good as any team in football last year. And then, Joe Burrow had an appendectomy to start the year. They lost their first 2 games. But I don't know if anybody's, maybe San Fran, but I don't know if anybody's been hotter than that team. So we knew that was going to be a real test. And again, that's why right now Cincinnati and Kansas City are the cream of the crop in the AFC, and we know we got to pay attention to them.
Brandon, we talked about follow-up. Do you feel like the gap is minimal between you and those two teams?
I don't know. I don't want to sit here and say they're both good teams, but we won 13 games. I think we have a good team. We didn't show it the other night, the team we are, but I think we beat a lot of good programs this year, and we lost 3 games by 8 points. Listen, I'm gonna own all the things that we can do better, no doubt. But our teams haven't. You don't see us. I'm gonna call that a blowout the other night, whether it was or wasn't. 17 points. Indianapolis here a year ago, they put it to us. But how many? We haven't. Nobody's really run us out of the gym very often. But they played a very good game, and we didn't have it the other night. But you got to be careful about saying off of one game. It's been like that Indianapolis game in season that we just said, hey, we stink, play all the young guys, kick the other guys to the curb. If this wasn't the tournament, if this had been the Cincinnati game in the regular season that we didn't get to finish, and that was the outcome, we would have come back here and said, man, we just got kicked in the teeth. Let's look at it. What happened? Where are our matchup advantages? Where are they doing it? Did they out-scheme us? We'd look at all those things. But I don't want to make it one game bigger than it is. The other night, they definitely proved that they deserved to move on, and we didn't.
Along those lines, Brandon, Sean will talk about needing to make moves as the game itself evolves, and maybe this is too forward-thinking a question, but is there anything that Cincinnati does? I'm thinking about those receivers, that type of. Do you see anything from them that suggests that's a trend that we need to kind of adapt to moving forward in order to close that gap?
No, they have a good team. They right now are on the advantage of a rookie quarterback contract, and they had some lean years, and without getting too much into their build. And, you know, I don't want to suck bad enough to have to get Jamar Chase. Like, he's a heck of a talent. I'd love to have him, but you gotta go through some lean years to do that. And, they were able to get Burrow 1, and I don't remember where Chase was drafted, but it was pretty high. Like, and those guys are on their rookie deals. We're paying Stephon Diggs a pretty hefty number. We're paying Josh Allen a pretty hefty number. So there is the constraints of the cap, but they have a really good team, and they got some good young players. We're going to try to get as many good players as we can through the draft and through, free agency. But, again, our cap situation is a little different by whoever's under the book. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that leads to another question, actually. I mean, can you project how tight you are to the cap and how much flexibility you're going to be able to have into the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I wish I had some answers that I don't. Normally in December, we go to the labor meetings and we get kind of a floor and a ceiling of the cap. Like, it's going to be 218 to 225 million, something like that. We don't have that at this point. They were basically waiting on that Sunday ticket deal with YouTube TV and maybe something else.
Yeah.
So, it's 208 this year, but I couldn't tell you if it's going to be 220 or 230, or I'm hoping for a lot of dollars, as much, because we need it. But, right now we're probably in the 240s of what's on the book. It ain't going to be 240 something. So the short answer is we're going to have to get under the cap by moves, could be roster cuts, and that's all the free agents that you guys are aware of, not on the books. All those are counting $0. So we're going to have to, without telling you, I mean, you already know the answer. There's not going to be a Von Miller signing or somebody of that. We're going to have to work to get under the cap so that we can operate next year.
Given that situation, how much do you have to in reality, hit the pause button so not to further mortgage the future going into this, and is that essentially the reality you face going into March?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be creative. We're going to try and win, and we're going to do everything. I started out by thanking Terry and Kim, and they'll give us every resource, and it's up to me to figure it out. And we're going to put as strong a team as we can out there, and hopefully we're hosting games next year. That's the goal. We're not going into this year saying, hey, I don't think we're going to be as talented as we were last season or in 2020 when we went to the AFC Championship. We just got to, we got to hit on draft picks. We got to find, low-cost free agents that can find roles, whether it's key backup, a solid starter, whatever it is. And so it'll be on, me and our scouting staff to make the right moves.
But just as a follow-up, this is what, but you can't mortgage the future any further in some ways when it comes to the salary cap, given the situation, the potential fix that you're in. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going, I think I've said it multiple times, we're not trying to go all in 1 or 2 seasons, but we'll be creative, we'll do things, we may have to rework a few contracts. It's not that we're not going to do that, but I also don't want to in 2 years be $100 million over the cap like we've seen teams have to do. I'm not looking to do that either.
So you just mentioned that you need to hit on your draft picks, obviously, given where you guys are with the cap. Do you feel like the 2022 class did enough to make it? Like, what are your first impressions of that class that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, it's how you want to look at it, Matt. It's when you have the better your team is, you probably don't have a bunch of young players making a bunch of plays. We're probably we build it up with more veterans or guys later in their, towards the end of their rookie contracts that are coming up. So it makes it harder and harder. In some of these rookies in 2019 would have played a lot more for us, or 2018, 2019, than they are in 2022. It's just the reality of, coaches, and we're always, you want to know when you put someone out there that they got it all figured out, and you only get so much time preseason. So, without going through them all, I think they, most of them helped us in some way, and we'll be counting on them even more, whether it's Kyer rotated some this year, started some, we'll be counting on him more. James Cook, he got more comfortable in the offense, figuring out the pro game. I mean, there's a lot of, we talk about, it's transition on the field, but also transition of life to what's a professional player versus what's a college player. And we just have to give these guys all time, but they're all our DNA. That we love them. Benford started out the year strong, got hurt, and didn't get a chance to come back. Terrell Bernard was one of our key backups and played special teams for us. We got roles for all of them, and I think going forward, explaining the cap situation, that we're going to count on all these guys to be even more involved as we get into 2023.
Brandon, given the capital that you've used on the defensive line in the draft and obviously a bunch of free agents, is it a concern to you that after Von Miller went out, the play of the defensive line really was not up to snuff? It definitely took I'm not going to say it was bad, but it took a nosedive after he left. Is that a concern with all the high draft picks you've used up front?
Yeah, I mean, a concern, no. It was definitely, you don't have a replacement in the cabinet for Von Miller, and our D-line was really playing well with Von out there. He allows more guys to be singled up, and so, yeah, I think we suffered some injuries. Jordan Phillips, played well in the preseason for us. Had good years here before he left to Arizona. Pulls his hammy in the Tennessee game. Was working his way back, and then the first New England game does his rotator cuff. I think we got beat up a little bit too in some of those areas. Rousseau had the high ankle. Greg was still, without making crazy excuses for him, I think pre-high ankle he probably played better and felt more like himself than he did after that. We went through some, multiple calf injuries there. We just, I think there's a lot of reasons, but, we're going to count on a lot of these guys to come back, and including Vaughn. And I said it earlier, we want to be strong up front. We do, both sides of the ball. If we think there's players, whether it's draft, free agency, whatever it is, that are better than what we got up front, then we'll definitely not hesitate to add there.
Brandon, when you've done a lot of drafting, developing, and then signing players, but they don't always move in a linear way where it's up every year. I'm thinking of a guy like Gabe Davis, who you drafted. How difficult is it to look at him, not just contractually as that clock ticks, but also his role with the team and how you look at the future for that position of somebody, maybe even specifically like him, when in a normal, if it was a great progression, it would be maybe a simpler decision, maybe not necessarily easy, that your plan would be to have him continue in that role.
Yeah, I mean, Gabe was in a full-time starter role this year, whereas in previous years he was number one sub or part-time starter. And so, I think Gabe did some good things this year. I know people focused on some drops that he had, but, Gabe's still a young player, still did a lot of good things, still made a lot of plays for us. I think that is a new transition as a full-time starter, and what you're going to see when you're coming in as the sub versus, he finished on a very strong note in the postseason. I'm sure every corner lining up from him, across from him, knew I better be on this guy or he'll make me pay. Whereas maybe first couple of years you're backing up, whether it was John Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, whoever, you're coming in a few plays, you're doing different roles, maybe they're not all eyes on you the way that, I think everyone after Gabe's postseason last year was very aware of him. And like I said, he did some very good things this year. There's some plays he wants back, and no one outworks Gabe. And he's, I trust Gabe a lot. I know Josh trusts him. I know our coaches trust him. And wherever he fell short this year, I'll bet you he'll prove it right and fix it next year. Yeah, you're right, Maddie.
Brandon, we heard yesterday from Sean McDermott, and he said that the next few days you guys are going to be evaluating your own roster and then also starting to put proper value on positions as we move forward. Can you explain how the value of certain positions may change as the NFL continues
Yeah, I mean, it starts with quarterback, and that's never going to change. But I think, you may ask one team, and they may say a corner is just as valuable as a pass rusher. You may ask another team, and they may say that, they want a safety in their system is more important than their middle linebacker. So we have our own priorities of how we do our offense, how we do our defense, what's most important. And we'll talk about that, like where our strong points are, and then where of these positions of highest value, where are we weakest, where are we getting exposed, and that's an every year, kind of question, Maddie. Does that make sense?
Brandon, you get 21 unrestricted guys who take all afternoon to talk about all of them, but Jordan and Tremaine in particular, the amount of football they've played, what they've meant to this defense. I mean, you seem to be in a kind of a tough spot here with both of them. What are your thoughts on their seasons and how you address each of their individual situations?
Yeah, I mean, two guys that are true Buffalo Bills. Can't say enough of great things about them. I'll start with Jordan. Jordan was in the first year here helping us go through the ups and downs, and that first playoff run, and him and Micah, it's hard to think of one without the other, but Jordan had some unfortunate luck this year starting in training camp where he got hurt, and then just one thing after another. And the guy took a bus or we rented one of those vans or whatever to get him to Kansas City. I don't know how many players would have done that. I give Jordan a lot of credit, and he was a pro, and I know the whole contract thing, like, people can handle those in many different ways. We all see that, but a lot of respect for how Jordan, handled this, and man, he's a great pro and did a lot of great things, for us, and would love to get him back, for sure. I'll be the first to tell you, again, when we get some clarity on the cap and what we can do, we'll know more there. Tremaine, we talked about it earlier, draft, develop, re-sign. Like, where that guy has gone is he's been amazing to watch his growth from a 19-year-old. I mean, it's not like he's 29. This kid's, he's still a kid. He's a young man, but very proud of who he is. And you can just see his maturation. Like, used to Tremaine, you guys feel him, he's a little as big as he is. He's so nice. And, like, you saw some anger, like fussing at guys. Hey, get your in gear. And, like, just the growth and him being comfortable in his skin to call out another player, whether it's a young guy or a vet. So he's a big part of our success as well, coming in with Josh that year. And, like Poyer and many of these other guys, would love to keep them all, and we'll do our best.
Would you consider?
Can you realistically keep them?
I got no idea. I don't even know what the cap's going to be, John.
Brandon, would you consider the franchise tag on Tremaine? I would say, especially with his age, but would you consider using that if you have to?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look at all that because pass rushers get put in there, that number can be high. So we'd have to really create some room to do that for him. But we'll look at it for sure.
You mean, just to clarify so everybody knows, you mean edge rushing outside linebackers in a 3-4 are counted as the same as off-ball linebackers when it comes to that stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brandon, what is your thoughts on Ken Dorsey, and how do you help a first-year play caller and a quarterback who's still trying to develop their game?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that I'm a better GM now than I was in 2017 or 2018. And Ken did a lot of good things. Our offensive numbers are good. Like any time you go through something the first year, I'm sure he felt at times like he was drinking out of a fire hose. You're dealing with different things. But Ken is a hard worker. He's smart. And you got a guy who played the position at a very high level, won national championships on a major college team. And that's an asset, too, knowing what, in this case, Josh is going through. And so Ken will be very self-critical. We'll all put our heads together, hey, these things went well, and these are some areas maybe we want to grow. And but it's, Sean talks about, it's about having the growth mindset. And I believe Ken does have that, and we'll continue to look for ways to help him, and that's our job to kind of support him in that, as he enters year 2.
Brandon, you said earlier you don't want to overreact to one game, how this season ended, but how do you juggle not overreacting to that game while understanding that you still haven't reached the goal the past couple of years here, and that maybe changes do need to be made?
Yeah, I mean, John, it's really, we've done a lot of good things, and you have to be playing your best football at this time of year. And again, this year we weren't, when we hit the playoffs, we weren't in a groove the way we were in 2020 or 2021. And without going back into that, you have to set yourself up in the regular season for seeding. And obviously you want the 1, so you get that bye. And we were right there going to Cincinnati, and we lost. It is what it is. But there's a lot of people in this league that would sign up to be the number 2 seed because you're hosting 2 games as long as you win, and a chance if one loses to host all 3. And that's the easiest route to the Super Bowl. You have to put yourself in that position because, yes, you can go on the road and win 3 games. We've seen that done. That's hard to do. But, you want to be a consistent team. It starts with winning your division every year, getting home playoff games. We've slowly moved up the ranking. We haven't got that 1 seed yet, but we're going to keep looking at every avenue we can. But I don't want to overreact to one game.
Brandon, you didn't have to look very.
Being good up front and prioritizing that. Do you feel like Spencer Brown did enough in year 2 to continue to develop, and do you see him as that right tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give out roster spots or anything, but I would say Spencer, let's look at Spencer's, again, I think as a world of social media and everything, and all the scouts on social media that can tell us who can play and who can't, is you got a young man that went to Northern Iowa. And again, I'm not making excuses, I'm just trying to lay it out. Didn't get to play because of COVID, okay? Then he gets drafted from Northern Iowa, which is not Alabama or LSU or some of those programs, and he's got to go play in the NFL. Part-time starter for us, and then in the offseason has this back issue that we can't get calmed down and has to have the surgery that he has, so he misses the whole offseason. And then he goes into training camp, and you guys were at camp. You saw him. He wasn't able to do much. We honestly didn't think that we would play him game 1, but he got himself there, but we got there without all the reps that you need as a veteran. Like, I wouldn't have wanted to put Deion Dawkins out there without all those reps. And so what I saw in Spencer is a guy the second half of the season that played better than the first half of the season. So I got a lot of confidence in him. He's maturing. He's understanding the league. A lot different type of pass rusher he's having to block here than what he saw at Northern Iowa. So I would ask people that are critical of him, give him some due, just like we were talking about Ken Dorsey. Like, I thought Spencer was showing an error up. But again, we're not going to give him a roster spot. We're going to bring in competition the best we can, and I expect him to answer the bell.
Brandon, Stephon Diggs, that situation in-game and post-game, how much of a concern is that to you moving forward?
Steph's a competitor, Adam, and I'd rather have guys like that. I've been around it. Steve Smith was a lot like that. I'd rather have guys I got to cool off and just, he wants to win. And that's I can live with that. Versus I've been around people that I question, are they just here for the Monday paycheck? Stephon Diggs has been paid very handsomely. Okay, he could say, man, I'm good, I'm set. I can take my private jets, I can do whatever I want. He wants to win, and so he wears his emotions on his sleeve. But that's what makes him really, really good. That's who Steph was coming out. Like, you're not gonna, I got my warts too, and certain things about me you're not going to change either. I'm an emotional guy too, and if I was losing out there, sometimes I probably think I'd be worse than Steph. So does that answer it?
Yeah.
Brandon, about a year ago, you were talking about this time, you were talking about not to expect any big splashes of free agents 2 months later, we know what happened. Today, you said don't expect a Von Miller signing. How much more firm do you think that might be, or is there a possibility for yet another surprise given your?
No, Von's that ticket for this year too, because we still got to pay him. And so when we made that move, that was all right, here's your big ticket expense. It wasn't a one-year deal type. If it was a one-year deal with Von, maybe. But that's kind of our, pass rusher, big ticket. So no, I don't expect that.
Brandon, we talked
I know
about.
it's outside perception. I know it's outside perceptions, but you came in this year as a Super Bowl favorite for a lot of people. That's likely not the case next year. Is there any benefit to maybe getting back to being a feeling of an underdog again, even though it's not that far back, but it's different now than maybe it was coming into this year, maybe for the entire organization?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, whether we're the underdog or, I think Sean does a good job of just control what you can control. You can't control what the narrative is out there. You can't listen to it, whether it's somebody bashing you or whether it's somebody telling you how great you are. Usually the truth's somewhere in the middle. And we just have to, it's really about in these walls, who we are, what our message is, what we're doing, and how we work. And this will be a new team, Mike, and it'll every team is a new team. And that's what's hard about this, because you love and respect. I'll never forget this team and what they all went through. That's the hard part of just an abrupt ending like this, is it's going to change because it's a business. But ultimately, next year's team, I hope people are saying good things about it. Whether people are saying we're supposed to be in the Super Bowl like last year, time will tell. But you're right, they probably won't. But it's ultimately, we've won the division 3 years in a row. You're still going to have targets on your back until, at least from your division opponents.
Brandon.
Everybody wants to talk about Super Bowl windows, and if they're closing, if they're still open, whatever it is. Is it too simple to say as long as Josh Allen is your team's quarterback, you're still in your window? Is that
Yeah.
too simple?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to try. We have plans to try and win every season. Okay, and we're not modeling anything in our forecast to say, hey, we're going to be really good. We're going to compete our butts off in 22, 23, and 24. But when 25 gets here, we're going to shred the roster other than Josh. And we have a plan to try and do it every year. Now things happen, and with injuries and again. I think our medical team's done a really good job, and not that they didn't this year. We just we got the bug a little bit this year early on, and kept thinking, man, if we can just get to the bye, we'll be all right. And then it never went away.
Right, Brandon, do you have a philosophy on when you value wide receivers in the draft? Because historically speaking, since you've been here, you guys haven't really chosen one until maybe a little bit later. Or does that just really come with the value of the board?
Chose Steph Diggs in the first round.
That's right.
Right.
Traded for him, right? I know. I
Right.
mean, as a younger player, using a draft pick itself
Yeah.
on a younger player though to come into the league like that.
It's really no. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate. It's not a position that I say, hey, you don't take it in the first round or anything like that. It's if he's a really good football player and he can fit in our offense, what we require of a receiver, we take him in a minute. If Jamar Chase, a guy like that, fell to us at 27 this year, I'd turn the card in a minute. So.
Brandon, you used the top 10 pick on Ed. You made a big investment by picking up his fifth-year option. Did you get what you needed from him this year, particularly after Von got hurt, and I guess more particularly in the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ed's has done some really good things for us and has grown from, looking back at, he just finished his 4th season with us. Yeah, I think there's some things he's done well. But I do think there's some meat on the bone. It's not from a lack of effort. He works hard. He's one of the guys, but I think he'd tell you, too, there's probably some plays he wants back in certain games or certain moments. And, going into his, we picked up his 5th-year option, so going into this season, we expect him to, find a little bit more, and I know Ed expects that of himself.
Brandon, care to talk about one of your favorite draft picks in Devin Singletary? His contract is up, and what are your thoughts about his growth, and how do you think that next year would be a better run balance next year for his offense?
Yeah, I mean, Devin, you want to talk about one of the most selfless people you can meet, just, and, you know, just love him from day one and what he's done, and just very steady personality, selfless, team first, whatever's needed. You need him to pass protect. You need him to, you know, I would say one of the things he really improved on was his short yardage running. We used him a little bit more when we traded Zach to Indy, when we got Naheem. And, you know, he's 200 pounds, but he showed some grit in there. We had some tough runs late in the season. We know he can make guys miss in a phone booth, and you know, I thought his hands improved, and his pass feel improved over the years. So great pro, and love Devin, and so again, he is a free agent too. So we'll have to see from the business standpoint, you know, how that will work out for us.
Hey, Brandon, could you evaluate?
Assessment of your coordinators, you spoke about Ken Dorsey. Could you expand that to the other side of the ball with Leslie Frazier? You mentioned some inconsistent moments and the failure to put a complete game together. Do you feel the coaching staff with the players in the best position to maybe overcome some of those inconsistent moments this season?
Yeah, I think the coaching staff, you know, we won 13 games. So, again, it's like Josh will tell you, I want some throws back. Like anything. It's easy for us all to sit here and question, you know, Ken Dorsey, why did you go deep there and not get the first down? Or why did you run the ball there on 3rd and 2? You know, we hadn't run it well earlier in the game. Whatever, you know, everyone's a Monday morning quarterback. Or Leslie Frazier, why didn't you blitz more? Or why were the corners off? I mean, you can second guess these guys all day long. But you know, statistically speaking, we've had really good defenses, and in his credit, and in Ken's first year coordinator, and again, not everything was perfect for either one of them, but they're both pros, and you know, you have to understand that sometimes games aren't going to go for a player or a coach exactly the way you want, and that's the reality of it.
Hey, Brandon, I was going to ask you whether, generally speaking, whether it be from a stats, analytics, or eye test perspective, just to kind of evaluate Josh and the season that he had. And are you comfortable with the fact that the word on him is he's not going to need any type of surgery on that elbow moving forward?
Yeah, I think we're good there. You know, Josh, the bar is so high for Josh, let's be honest. And so, you know, if he doesn't play an elite game, then people say he should have done better. And you know, I would say there's probably some turnovers that he would tell you, I can't put the ball in harm's way. But we also see those plays that he makes, no, oh, what a play. And so you have to live with that a little bit. I mean, he's just such a unique player that if you're going to, you know, pat him on the butt for the wow play, you got to overlook that sometimes just trying to make a play, he's going to throw back across traffic. You know, I think Josh has continued to grow his leadership this year. I think took another, another turn up, and I think you saw that through some of the adversity that we dealt with. And you know, I know when we were in the thing that stood out to me was when we were in the locker room dealing with DeMar situation in Cincinnati, that people were looking to Josh of communicating with me, Sean, and Terry on, and Ron Rakuya of what we were going to do, how we were going to do this. And there's no playbook for that for him either, not for us either. But, his teammates were looking to him, and he was ready to answer it, even though he was emotionally like us going through it all. And I thought he handled that whole thing. It weighed on him a lot. And I thought he worked his way through it. But overall, Adam, I think Josh, had a really good year for us. We did a lot of good things. The only thing I get on to him, he's got too many bruises on him. And we got to work on taking less hits. That's the only reason I'm going to ever criticize Josh, is just take less hits.
Brandon, we talked to you the day after the trade deadline, and the big acquisition was Naheem Hines. You mentioned him earlier in your press conference, and Sean brought him up yesterday and how he could have been utilized more. Is it frustration? Is it confusion of how that guy who you added to be a difference maker ended up touching the ball 13 times on offense?
Yeah, I mean, without getting into it, it's, in fairness to the coaches, it does take some time to get them up to speed, from that standpoint. And it's hard to, I think it will be easier in an off-season to get them the whole playbook, get the feel. You kind of install a lot more things than you do in season. So, yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, would have loved to get him more touches, and hopefully that will happen next season.
Did Cole give you what you thought you would be getting when you brought him back? He said yesterday that he would like to be playing potentially here if it was work for both sides. What did you think about what you got?
Yeah, I thought Cole came in, and it took him a little time. He played that, 2 weeks in Tampa, but he was really just, sounds like playing basketball and throwing with, just a buddy or somebody. So he wasn't in, football shape, the speed of the game, and I think he'd be the first to tell you. So it took him some time, part of the reason we had him on the practice squad, just get yourself going. But I thought the last couple of weeks you started seeing, in those 2 postseason games, really, you started seeing the Cole who was here before. This offense is similar, but it's not exactly the same. So there was a little bit of nuance there from that standpoint, that of some of the route combinations versus exactly what he left when Daves was here.
What are some of the bright spots you notice about this team that keeps you excited for the next season process?
Oh, I could be here for a while on that, Mookie. We got a lot of bright spots. Starting with Josh Allen. It's a quarterback league, and we got one of the better ones in the league, and he's just going to continue to get better because he's going to see more and go through it. But we got a lot of players all over the board, without going through them. I think we got a good building. I think we've got people that understand what it takes, and so we're a long way from where we were when we got here, but we know there's work to do. And just everyone in this building is frustrated that we didn't get the result that we all wanted, but no one's feeling sorry for themselves. It's back at it, and let's be honest. And so I'm excited that we're all gonna, there's not gonna be any finger pointing. We're all gonna work through this, and we're gonna work on answers, for 2023, and hopefully get the outcome we're looking for next year.
Brandon, you mentioned last year how Josh taking less hits, and always that's kind of part of his play, is he's going to take those hits. But what as a team, or can Josh do so that next year we're not sitting here being like, he's got all these proven teams to take less hits? What does this team need to do to limit those hits on him?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. Josh is his own worst. I mean, he's just such a competitor. He gets out there and he's, he thinks he's a linebacker sometimes. And again, we talked about Steph. You don't want to take that out of Josh. And a few runs here or there. It's just knowing when to get down, when to get out of bounds. And I thought last season he actually made his biggest jump with taking less hits. I think this year there were some times in some games where he felt, for whatever reason, maybe we weren't rolling, the way we wanted to in the passing game, and he's like, I'm going to put it in my hands. He trusts himself, and so we just gotta, he's got to trust our playmakers, and then our playmakers have to make plays. I think if they're doing that and he's doing his part, then hopefully he feels less obligation that he's got to tuck it and run it.
Brandon, at the time that Vaughn had his surgery, I think your quote was, we expect him for most of 2023. And it's so hard to gauge with ACLs, and players respond differently in rehab and all of that. What is your expectation for Von Miller in terms of when he comes back, and relative to when Trey did, for example, looking ahead as you make your plans?
Yeah, I think Vaughn's in a good spot. I think he's doing well. I expect him, I'm going to say the same thing. I expect him for a good portion of 2020. I'm not ruling out all of 2023, but I don't want to say that either. I think it's too early. I think I was asking Nate, he's 7 weeks. It's crazy how time flies, but that was 7 weeks ago that he had that surgery. Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things I learned is that same injury, different surgery, different surgeons, different expectations, different, I could tear my ACL and it just be ACL only. You could tear your ACL and it could be some cartilage, some meniscus, some other things. So some of those play into each of these. We all generally just hear he tore his ACL. So I think that, and I think too, if, in Trey's situation, it's the first time he had a major injury. And so you want to make sure that mentally he's ready to go back out there. And if you're worried about getting injured when you're out there, you might get in. You know what I mean? It's just so it's the thing about Vaughn. He's actually torn his ACL before. He's had a long, so that gives me confidence that he understands what that's like and the whole rehab process. And that's probably the best I could tell you is that all surgeries are a little bit different, and but we feel good with where Vaughn's at.
Tre'Davious was honest too, that he knew it was still gonna be a process even once he came back. What do you think he did once he was back on the field this season?
Yeah, I think he was definitely rusty early. And I think part of that is just not playing football for a year. We talked about that. I'm like, Trey, if you retired and came back after a year, even if you had no injury, you'd be rusty. You can't just walk out there. Spencer Brown, we talked about earlier, you need reps. There's nothing you can do to replicate going against the speed that these guys play. And so I think separate of the injury, just playing football again, getting into the rhythm and studying what the opponent's doing and knowing that it's different than rehab. And so I think that took him time, but I thought he got better and better and more confident. It's natural. If you tear your ACL, you're not just going to go plant and drive that thing as a corner the first time they throw your way. And so, I think he did really good. He handled it, and I think next year he'll be even more confident, and then he'll be further off the injury.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Appreciate you.